Good evening, everyone. Today we are live in Facebook, and I'd like to welcome everyone in this pleasant evening of July 25th, 2020. So, thank you for joining us for today's free webinar, guys. And my name is Dio Kasha. I'm the business manager of Academia. Academia is a provider for CPD courses, learning management system, and educational contents for grades 7 to 10 in the Philippines. So today, we are presenting creating standalone science module for teachers, the success and challenges of modular distance learning. And of course, if you have any questions later during the presentation, please uh, type them into the chat box in your control panel. And I will also bring them up during the presentation, and we will also have time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. And for the certificates, it will be provided after the webinar. So let me check. I guess our speaker is ready. So without further ado, we will turn the time over to Mr. Renan Mata from DepEd Manila. Sir
Hi.
Reynet, good evening
Hi,
po.
good evening. It's raining. It's raining here in Manila. So I hope I'll find you find it interesting to at least share what I know and share what I've experienced as a module writer for the past 5 years. I would like to share this one because it's quite timely because majority of us are doing modules and majority of us are choosing what type of modules are available in the internet or available or circulating right now. So I'll be presenting my talk about creating standalone modules or self-learning modules. So how do we do share screen, right? Okay,
Opo, sir.
there. Okay. 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 Are we all set?
I think it's good, sir. It's
Okay.
now
Thank
showing
you.
in our screen.
Yeah. Thank
Lumalabas na
you.
po.
So welcome to this webinar. The title of this webinar is all about creating standalone modules for science teachers, the success and challenges of modular distance learning. So I am Renan Pimata. I'm a master teacher of Manuel Luis Quezon High School. My school is under DepEd, the Division of Manila. So before we begin, let's have first an overview of what is education. According to Agarwal of 2009, the education process is a systematic, sequential, planned course of action consisting of two major interdependent operations. We have the teaching and the learning. This process forms a continuous cycle that also involves two interdependent players. We have the teacher and the learner. Together, they jointly perform teaching and learning activities which leads to both mutually desired outcomes. As we all know, the class will begin on August 24. Our agency or the Department of Education offers two common or two prominent learning delivery modalities. We have what we call blended learning, which of course we've discussed earlier, I think before in our earlier series. And of course, one we will discuss today, distance learning. One major role or key player in the success of distance learning is its content or what will be the shape of distance learning. In this case, the shape of distance learning is through modules, which we will discuss today. Now, when we talk about distance learning, we will encounter prominent terms such as independent learners because it promotes independent learning, and then they will be supervised by their parents and guardians. Now, what will be supervised? Now, the thing or the most prominent thing that will be supervised is the use of modules. Now, in this session, I will share to you things such as what are the different standalone modules or the self-learning modules. Some call it SAM, some call it SLM. What are the different components of these standalone modules? What are its advantages and disadvantages? And we will recognize the role of self-learning module as a new strategy or as our remedy for this pandemic. Now let's begin. Now when we talk about self-learning modules or standalone modules, these are documents wherein all necessary knowledge or information can be attained through this module solely or independently being touched or being given by the teacher. So when we talk about standalone modules or self-learning modules, the module is a document wherein it will be the one who will give or provide students necessary informations for them to learn. Now, in this case, this promotes what we call independent learning for students. Now, using this module, students can take over a large part of the training, wherein the teacher will remain available only if time is needed. Now, there are different platforms or different ways on how we offer standalone modules. It can be in a form of workbook, study guides, videotapes, and then internet modules like DepEd is using right now. We have the e-modules and of course computer games. Now, what are the different characteristics of this standalone modules? It has 5S. We have the it should be self-explanatory. It should be self-contained, self-directed, self-motivated, and of course, evaluating. Now, what are the different advantages of these standalone modules? If we're going to adapt modules, especially for distance learning, students will have this freedom wherein the activities or the chores are being scheduled around work and family. When we say work and family, there is what we call parental involvement for the students for them to learn. Also, students will find it easier for them to manage their own understanding because it reduces time and travel for the students. When we talk about modular distance learning, it cuts off the idea of students going to schools. If that's the case, it reduces the travel time and travel costs for them going to school. The modules also facilitates different types of learning, different types of activities. Later on, I'll be showing you the modules of academia for grade 7 science. There's an example there wherein the teacher gives a lot of activities suited to individual unique needs. Now, standalone modules can also promotes students' responsibility to his or her own learning. By this case, when we talk about modular distance learning, majority of it is mostly asynchronous, meaning the learning is asynchronous to the extent that the students will have this freedom of choosing what time he or she will accompany or will do the module. Also, it is convenient in time, place, duration, and the pacing of the instruction. With the existing, with standalone modules, teachers can assess at what part does the student find it difficult to understand. So if that is the case, the teacher will now intervene as a facilitator wherein he or she will have this responsibility of clearing out some instructions during the course of teaching and learning wherein students find it more difficult. Also, standalone modules promotes privacy wherein there is what we call high um, communication between the student and the teacher. Since standalone modules promotes individuality, students will find it more comfortable to address his or her concerns to the teacher directly without addressing it to the entire class like we normally do inside the class. So when we talk about standalone modules and self-learning modules, this promotes privacy that lessens anxiety, especially for students who didn't want to raise their hands or didn't want um, class recitations, or they are not accustomed with classroom recitations inside, or knowing what they don't know, especially addressing it to the class itself. If there are advantages, therefore, there are also disadvantages. When we talk about disadvantages, since self-learning modules or standalone modules promotes individuality, there are some students that mostly accustomed with interactions or they want group collaborations, um, which are far more challenging for them. Now, what are some of the disadvantages? One of which is unmotivated learners or those with poor study habits may fall behind. Meaning, if the child or the learners find it difficult to catch up, especially with our instruction, they will be less motivated. So when we do standalone modules or self-learning modules, the instruction must be clear. The instruction must be direct to the point. Also, students may feel isolated or miss social interaction if he or she find it hard to understand the content and the instruction of the self-learning module. Also, one a major factor wherein students find it hard to follow self-learning modules or standalone modules is because of the availability of the instructor. Students will find it less motivated if the instructors are not around. Also, learners with low motivation or bad study habits may fall behind. So it's very, very important when you give or you deliver your modules to your students, make sure that you establish first study habits or good study habits. Addressing this is by creating routine structures that enable students to follow or be guided with your standalone or self-learning modules. Lack of interaction between learners and instructors are also a vital key for the success of these modules. Without consistent feedbacking and without constant interaction, between learners and instructors, um, these modules will not be successful. Also, we must take into consideration the formatting. If the format is too structured, wherein it's dull and not visually interesting to students, they will not do these modules. Also, we must accept the fact that teachers must be creative in promoting standalone modules that later on promotes group or social interactions. We can do this one online and we can do this one offline. But because of this pandemic, it must we can do this one. This is possible, but this is limited. Up to some extent, if your module is too structured, students might find it boring. So later on, I'll be showing you the module being done by academia writers, showing them how these modules or how standalone modules or self-learning modules being done by academia. Now, what are the different components? Now, according to research, these are some of the prominent components of a standalone module or a self-learning module. We have the title, we have the content and the performance standards, which are aligned with the recent curriculum. As I've mentioned, the curriculum now that we are supposed to adapt is the most essential learning competency, or the MELC. We have also the objectives, because we want to find out what do we want for our students. We also have the introduction. Later on, I'll be showing you 3 different types of introduction. O, di ba? When we say introduction, there are 3 types, and you can see that one in a module. So later on, I'll be showing you the module of academia, and then I will pinpoint what are these different types of introductions being displayed in all the modules of academia. We also have the learning activities. Now, these learning activities must be different. By doing so, we are catering different types of learning needs. So when we create, if we want to create modules, we must take into consideration the variety of activities that we must put in our modules. Take note, if we put single or common or one type of activity only, it will create boredom to students. Therefore, producing what we call unmotivated learners. We also have instructional aids that helps us, or that helps students understand how to answer your activities. And we also have tests. What can we expect? Now, in a module, we must have a pre-test and a post-test for us to assess what they know and what should be done in our module. And of course, our content. Self instructional or self-paced module or standalone modules, self-learning modules must have a content for us to assure that the students know what they've learned based on the content that we will be presenting. So let's now go specifically in this component. For the introduction, there are 3 types of introduction. Okay? We have the introduction in the upper part of the module, which we call as instructional part. So later on, I'll be showing you the instructional part of the introduction. We have what we call the guidance part. When we say guidance part, this introduction will give the learners idea how to answer the specific activity, that is the guidance part, and of course, the thematic part. When we say thematic part, these are type of introductions that connects one activity to the other. Para siyang game. parang you will not proceed to level 1 unless you level 2 unless you go to level 1, stuff like that. So later on, I'll be showing you these different types of introductions present in the academia modules. We also have content. If you're planning to put content in your module, make sure you have this following criteria. First, it must be in small steps. Second, it must be in logical or chronological arrangement. Now, when we talk about logical arrangement and ordering of the content, you must be aligned with the most essential learning competencies being set by DepEd. Now, by doing so, your module will be aligned with the present curriculum. Now, the alignment is being done by DepEd. When you do this module, they must be aligned. Also, your module must be personalized in style. When we say personalized in style, you can have this idea of presenting first the content, followed by the activity, or if you have links that can promote deeper understanding, you may do so. So the teachers has this freedom of what will be arranged in the set of activity. Let's say, for example, the teacher will be presenting first the activity, followed by the links, followed by the content. They may do so. So when we talk about personalized style, creativity of the teacher must come in. He or she must have this idea of presenting lessons by those manner, whether it is being started up by the activity, followed by the content, or the other way around. We also must take into consideration the language. If we're going to use the module in lower years, such as elementary, junior high school, or senior high school, we must check that what type of language the teacher use. It must be common. It must be friendly. And of course, in choosing the illustrations, there are some illustrations that can be that we can copy from the net. Make sure you get the title or where the reference of the picture. But there are some instances that those pictures comes pixelated. So for you being a module writer, you must consider what type of illustration you will be putting, and of course the reference of that picture taking part in your module. You must take into consideration what type of picture are you supposed to include in your module. If that is colorful, take into consideration what if that is being offered online and printed by schools. Would the color affects the illustration? Would the color be at some point in relation to your lesson? Stuff like that. And also, you must have a very good type of assessment wherein in each activity, we must make sure that the assessment must be clear, and the assessment is in reality being done by students. So later on, I'll be showing you a sample wherein we also create academia creates modules that promotes different types of learning assessments. Okay, now for organization, when we talk about organization, the arrangement of the activities, the flow. When we talk about organization, it should be known to unknown, simple to complex, concrete to abstract, and particular to general. Okay? So when we want to create the module, make sure you have this outline of the different activities and consider its organization from the simplest concept down to the most complex concepts. And of course, be able for the learners to use the different ideas or learnings he or she obtained in the module, adapting it to a new scenario. So later on, I'll be presenting you the module, and then later on, looking at its complexity. Okay, the language of the content. It should be simple and with clear sentences. It uses simple vocabulary. It has at some point one idea, one paragraph, or if you can lessen that paragraph to 1 to 2 sentences, you may do so. And of course, you find it attractive. When you say attractive, if you want to put lessons, if you want to create your content more attractive, make sure you put illustrations that is also attractive. Now, what are the roles of the teacher here? The role of the teacher here is from facilitator, it will become a resource person. Transformer in a sense that the module will be teacher directed to self-directed. And the teacher also assess the readiness for the method. So before the delivery of this module, make sure that the teacher assess the readiness of the method. So when you say assessing it's the readiness of modular type of learning, they must have first dry runs, or they must have first trial for, let's say for example, 5 students. So before we reach August 24, make sure that the learners, make sure that the school has their own trial and error system wherein the students can give feedback to the modules being done. And of course, we have maintain educational standards. Now, the teacher must maintain the objectives, the availability, and its evaluation. So let's go first to the module itself before we go further. Now, this is the module of academia. This is just in doc format. Now, as you can see here, they have this title. Lakihan ko ng konti. There. So they have this lesson. Let's say this is grade 7, first quarter module 2. Now look at the module. Look at the module. They have the title. They have the overview of the lesson. They have the content and performance standards. And of course, the lesson itself align with the MELC. What is good here is that they have the title, they have the objective, they have the code, and they have at some point the activities that the students will be doing in the module. Now, they have tests. Let's say, for example, in this case, they have pre-test. Okay. Then, what's good in this module is that it has this part. Date accomplished, parent signature, the score, and who checked it. Now, if the students are at home, we can see, and this is being done online or offline, there is what we call parents' participation. And there is also assurance that the students, before proceeding to the next lesson, they are being monitored and checked. Okay? Now, look at this. You are now in lesson 2. You have 6 weeks to finish this lesson. You have done, okay, what is this? This is a form of introduction. Now, this is known as the guided introduction. Recall, we have 3 types of introduction. We go back, balik tayo para at least you are guided. Ayan. This is the guided part. Okay? Guided part siya kasi we have the pre-test, and then before going to the first lesson, may guided introduction ka. Ito yon. Now, in creating modules, dapat present tong mga to. Now, we go to the module. Okay, lesson 2, diversity, Now, this is the picture. Look at the picture. And of course, kung saan siya galing na reference. And we have now, this now is the structural part. So parang nilulubog mo na yung bata doon sa lesson na, ito yung pinaka-introduction nung lesson. Okay? So, when we talk, may isa pang introduction. So, anong klase namang introduction to? This is the guidance part. Now, anong pinagkaiba niya dito? Dito, in this case, the learners will be given instructions on how to do the module. So, take note, you must have these different types of introductions in your modules. Kasi kung wala ito, maliligaw or your students will find it hard to understand your modules. Ayan. So you must use this type of common terms like enjoy and have fun. Okay. So for activity number 1, let's have now this one. So balik tayo doon We have what we call the thematic part. So saan natin makikita yung thematic part ng introduction? Dahil meron siyang part, ano yung mga part ng module na to? We have the introduction, then meron din siya yung, ayan these are also introductions. So parang ang dating, kinakausap ng module yung estudyante. Okay? So what is good in this is, let's say for example, in this part, presentation, before going to the activity, the teacher gives a link wherein the students will have to watch first for them to understand the activity. In this case, the activity of the teacher it has a title, which is a very good component of the module. Take note, if you're going to create activities, it must be personalized. Yun yung sinabi ko kanina. And it has a style. So the style is data storage chart. This is the storage chart wherein the students will group the different terms inside the box here. So what's good in this module is that there is what we call interaction between the students and the module. The teachers can intervene here if the teacher will set a routine that before doing an activity, if they have any questions, they can immediately chat, text the teacher. And of course, one thing good here is that after doing the activity, there are process questions. When you say process questions, it has what we call questions that process students' understanding of what he or she learns with the activity. And also, I love this one. Each episode has what we call the validation part, wherein what time or what date it is accomplished, the parent's signature, the score, and then the check by. One thing that is good in this module, it has a portion. This is the content. In the content, look at what the teacher do. It has what we call concept maps, wherein in these concept maps, students will find it easier to understand the lesson because it is presented in a different way. Also, look at this. The presentation is not in a paragraph type. It's more of a bullet type. It's more simpler. And look at this. The delivery is more of direct to the point. Meaning, the explanation of this concept map explains, the explanation is more of directed. So, students will find it easier to understand it without merely the presence of the teacher because of the presentation on how the content is being presented. So, one thing that is good, it has extensions. After the content, the teacher extends the idea, testing the student's capability or checking the student's capability of understanding the lesson. Look at this. Look at the graph. the illustrations rather. The illustrations are in black and white. If you're going to ask me, I rather present pictures in black and white format because I'm expecting that if this will be by schools, printed by schools, we will not find it. The illustrations will be in black and white, so most probably the resolutions will not be compensated. And then accomplishment. One thing that I love in this module, look at this. So I think in this part, it has a bearing because the picture describes the group. Okay? So the teacher, in this case, must take note in the teacher's guide. I think academia has teacher's guide that this must be printed or the color must be in consideration with the picture. And of course, the link, the process questions. I love this because it has a process questions. And of course, in reality, I think the picture here are the true pictures of the different gases in the periodic table, which is good. Why? Because we want to showcase real-time pictures or real pictures for students. In the red this corner, so look at the pieces of the paragraph. One idea, one paragraph only, because we want this to be minimal or in a minimum type of explanation. So going further, I see some very good part, like for example, in this case, in the content part, the writer uses colorful materials. In this case, I love this because in this part, this is somewhat good for me. Why? Because the module writer presents the activity in different formats. He wants the students to watch it if the module is online. If the module is not online, what will we do if that is printed? Look at this. This is water electrolysis procedure, but in printed format. Look at the presentation. You have there the procedure and you have there the diagram. Take note that the learners the teacher successfully address the learner's needs because majority of our students are visual learners. Therefore, by doing so, the teacher presents the experiment using procedure type but with picture type, or it has an equivalent picture. Okay? Look at that. So it is somewhat successful on the part of the teacher because he or she is confident that the students can answer this because of the pictures accompanied in each procedural task. Now, one thing that is good in this module, if you're going to do module, is that there are some open-ended questions for the students to answer. Now, this is in line with the pictures that you will be presenting. In this case, the teacher wants the students to observe precipitates or bubbles. Now, in order for the students to observe it, the picture must be clear and not pixelated. Also, the picture must be guided with labels for the students to understand. Like for example, in this case, hydrogen produces popping sound. But since this is a module, the students cannot hear a popping sound. So the writer is they focus more of the oxygen. Look at the oxygen. I think we can answer this one because I presume that majority of us are science teachers here. I think the oxygen gas can promote combustion or more fire in this case. So in the read this corner, it should be concise. Now, one thing that is good in this module or in all of the academia modules is it also presents different types of activities. Like for example, elements puzzle, and then What's okay? Then it also have visual prompting wherein students will identify which is pure and which is mixed in the diagram, like that. And in the read this corner, look at the read this corner. It's very, very simple for the students to understand. It's in bulleted. I love this one because in this part, the writer creates a timeline wherein the writer wants the students to arrange how a mixture is being separated using these different types of pictures. I love this because also the teacher gives alternative ways. Like for example, they can watch in YouTube how this is being done. And of course, the process questions. Look at the content. It is shorter and accompanied by pictures. One thing that is good also in module in academia is that it has what we call teacher's note or teacher's signature, wherein the teacher has a role of checking or monitoring whether or not they accompany the activities. One thing also that is good, it also promotes home experiments. The teacher can promote home experiments or do-it-yourself experiments being done by students at home. But take note, in the teacher's guide, you must include there that there must be teachers' participation on the, parents' participation on this matter. In the read this corner, look at that. It's very, very simple. Also, since this is science, we can also integrate analyzing graphs. I think there is one here that integrates graph. Also, we can also include situational activities that it doesn't require actual beakers. Look at that. This is very, very good. The read this corner is very, very simple. Look at this. Now, this promotes critical thinking. Why? Because, lakihan ko ng konti, students will analyze tables, which is one thing that is a good thing for assessing students' critical thinking skills. Yeah. Also, in this module, it has, look at the arrangement, the content is at the lower part. So the teacher or the science teacher successfully manages to arrange the organization from the first one, activity, followed by a sample video, and followed by the content. This is also home experiment. Make sure in the home experiment, the availability of the materials are at home. Also, computations. I love this one because the teacher presents an acronym which he calls GRESA, or given, required, equation, solution, and then answer, like that. So it also gives a presumption to the learners that if he consistently fill this up, it's equivalent to 5 points. GRESA. So this is 5 points. This is much easier for the teachers to check and for the learners to fill up because the computation is in tabular format. So that's it. Look at the readiness corner. It's very, very simple. Now, one thing that is good in this module is that the module successfully adapts to COVID. Why? Look at this. In the practice part of the module, there's what we call be an eco warrior, meaning that the teachers, the students will be tested by adapting what they learn from the activities to the different minimal health standards being set by the Department of Health. Like for example, the teacher also use examples for the students to be guided. Example, use of alcohol. Oh, what are the different concepts behind alcohol? In this case, the teacher, as part of the example, alcohol is an example of a solution. So therefore, this is an example. So when we create modules, take note that you must include you must include examples for the students to be guided. And also, I love this because the module gives time for the learners to reflect what part of the activity did it find it hard or challenging. It's also for the teachers to monitor or to reflect what are the part of the activities in your module that must be revised. For closure, it has an exit card, which is a very good part of the module. And that's it. Look at that. It has a term, congratulations, you have completed this lesson. The post-test, look at the post-test. It has graphics, which is very, very good also for learners because it has pictures. And of course, your performance task. I love this module because it has a performance task that can be done at home. It has also presentation rubric and the glossary, which I've mentioned earlier. One thing that is good to this module is that it has a glossary of terms that can be used by students without using anymore or without looking anymore to the dictionary. So going part, I think I discussed that the module itself. That's a very good module. Now, before you present or you give the module, take note, fellow teachers, you must create first learning contracts. When you say learning contracts, these are documents wherein you lay down your expectations there, the students will lay down their expectations there, and you meet at some point. Because this contract will prove or will give the students and the teachers certain freedom and choices or tasks that the students will meet at a certain specifications. Let's say, for example, you want the activity to be done after 2 days. You must include in your learning contract that students must do this after 2 days. By doing so, you're creating at some point a strong communication between the learner and the student and how things are doing well in your module. So take note, before giving modules, you must have a learning contract signed by the teacher, signed by the parent, and signed by the students. Now, what are some of the factors that enhance this successful use of standalone modules? It provides time for learners' activity because as we expect, modular distance learning is more of asynchronous. So therefore, it provides time for the students to do this one, especially during this pandemic that the students are mostly at home. It reinforces knowledge acquired through the module because of its continuity or the continuous activities. It reinforces knowledge accompanied by the selection of videos as being suggested by the teacher, and of course, the Read This Corner as being suggested for offline modules. So take note, your module must be flexible for online and offline courses. It also clarifies goals and training process. So the key here before you create modules is that it must have a sequence. The first thing that you need to do is the sequence, followed by the goal and the training process. So by doing so, we can now make our modular distance learning successful. So based on DepEd, this is the process flow of modular distance learning. The teacher will prepare the module and then they will be given online or offline. In this case, this will be given online and offline. Offline. I think for academia, they'll be offering this both online and then in offline also. So for offline, this will be the mode. Parents will be picking up at school. That's the first one. Home delivery or pick up in the barangay. I think in academia, I think some people in academia can explain how can this be done offline. And of course, the parents will receive the instructional material. Now, what are part of this module? We have the guide, the teacher's guide, the activity itself, the instruction, and then the checklist. So these are some of the pictures I've gathered that promotes on a modular distance learning. The teacher will do the module. The students will answer it in different ways, whether by cell phone, by their own tablet, or by learning packages. Now, what are some of the suggested resource or platforms? Modules can be in online. So we have the learning resource material or it can be in the learning management systems of your chosen school. I think academia has their own learning management learning management systems that these modules are embedded. So what is good is that if the module is very, very good, therefore, if you put that in your LMS will also be at some point good because the content is good. Look at its connectivity or connection. If the two of them are good, therefore, both of them can be successful. We have also digital packets, or let's say, for example, learning materials. We can use or learning materials or computer-based learning resources like academia is doing right now. They are translating these modules to e-modules for easy access, especially if the school if your division has a stable internet connection. If none, I think your division or even academia, as far as I know, offers offline modules. So that's it. I think I'm done. I think we can now proceed with the question and answer.
Thank you so much, Sir Ren.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So,
Can I take this one so I can see you guys? Would that be okay?
yes, yes po.
Okay. Okay. Here.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Stop sharing. Okay.
So, it's dalawa lang po tayong makikita dyan.
Okay.
So,
Dalawa
well,
lang.
I guess we have to, yes,
Yeah.
naka-StreamYard tayo. So, but we are live in Facebook so they can see us as well.
Okay.
Now we can proceed with, well,
The
thank you
question and
so,
answer.
so much again. Yes, the question and answer, sir. So, all we have to do is to check some questions here. Very helpful presentation, Sir Ren. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Let me check some questions here.
Yeah.
If we have. Okay, so I'll just read some. While we wait, sir, can I ask a question? Pwede po bang magtanong?
Sure.
Basically, what do you think is the greatest challenge when it comes to this modular learning system? You know, we have some
Okay.
challenges. Mhm.
So as the term implies, it's distance. So
Yes.
meaning challenge is the distance. The challenge here is the concrete communication between
Mm-hmm.
the students and the parent. If
Yes.
you fail to make your module stand alone or self-paced, everything will fall apart. Even if there is a strong communication between the
Mm-hmm.
learner and the student, the learner and the teacher. If
Okay.
it will depend on the communication. It will depend mostly on what type of communication are you into. If the communication is more of the students asking question kung anong gagawin sa activity, asking questions, paano sasagutan, therefore, that is a strong sign that the module is not very well developed.
Okay.
Meaning, in the module, it is not clearly state state in the module that there are clear instructions. If you're going to look at the academia module, there are clear instructions on how the students will do the lesson, on how the students will answer each question or each activity. So therefore, as part of the criteria, there the key player there is good instructional aid. Even if your content is good, your illustration is good, but if the student fails to answer the question or even one single activity, there is a high chance that the students will be unmotivated. So the idea here is the writer must have the idea of putting himself or himself or herself to the shoe of the student. Kailangan
Mhm.
ganun tayo isip na
Yes.
maiintindihan niya ba kung ito lang ibibigay kong instruction? Maiintindihan niya ba kung ito lang ilagay kong content? Now, if you're going to look at the content I presented based on the academia module, maiikli lang.
Mhm.
So, that is a key factor. Kasi pag nilagay mo doon na discussion is parang nag-discuss si teacher ay nag-discuss ng buong chapter, hindi babasahin ni bata. If that happens, doon na mag-uumpisa yung pagiging unmotivated ni bata. Hindi na siya magsasagot. Kasi ang haba ng babasahin. And take note, mag-isa lang siya sa bahay. Paano kung ang parent hindi naman din hindi masyadong present sa bahay, nagwo-work. So, yung isolation ni bata, yung feeling of isolation, lonely, mag-isa lang siya, and ang haba-haba pa ng babasahin, nag-a-add yun sa learning jargon and nag-a-add up siya sa learning gap ni bata to the point mapapansin mo hindi na siya nagsasagot. Adding to the fact na hindi welcoming si teacher. Kailangan kasi as teacher, when you give this module, magbibigay ka, ang una mong isiset for 1 week is the routine. Anong oras ka pwedeng i-chat ni bata? Anong oras ka pwedeng i-text ni bata? Anong oras ka available? Anong oras pwedeng magkaroon ng tinatawag na consultation time? Nagtatanong ka rin, nag-a-update ka rin, nasa ang activity na kayo? Without creating or making a stable teaching and learning routine, hindi magiging successful ang module mo kahit ganun pa siya kaganda. Okay?
Okay. Thank you po.
Welcome.
So, thank you, Sir
Ano mga
Ren.
tanong, pero?
Yes, may mga tanong na po tayo.
Nakatuwa.
Sir, from Ma'am, maliit yung screen ko. Wait. Bonjok Maureen. Sir, good evening. Should answer key be included in the module? Well,
Ako, if that is included in the printing process or siguro mas maganda, like academia have done, yung answer key nakahiwalay. Kasi darating yung point kapag alam ng bata na yung answer key nasa baba, hindi na sasagutan. Kokopya na lang. Tama po ba, sir?
Yes po.
Okay, that is subject to cheating. And we are not promoting here learning. Kasi yung bata mag-cheat na lang siya. Kasi one thing that is good, if the answer key is not included in the module, it promotes collaboration. How? Ako sa akin, hindi siya cheating eh. On my personal point of view, kung yung mga estudyante, nag-create sila ng mga GCs pa, na, uy, ano sagot nyo sa number 1? Care to share. Uy, ano sagot nyo sa number 2? Care to share. It promotes collaboration. Therefore, your module is so good enough that the students will make adjustment, will make necessary way on how they will answer the question. And by doing so, mas effective sa bata yung nag-uusap sila. Kung yan online, at nalaman mong yung mga bata mo nagki-create pa lang ng ibang GC for collaboration, that's a good sign that your module is good. Kasi from individualized learning, nagiging siyang by group. Diba? So may I suggest dapat ang sagot, it should be not included in the module na ibibigay sa bata. Pwede dapat siya nasa teacher's guide, na nasa teacher lang. And maganda rin doon, subject kasi, the teacher will shift from giving information giver to validator or let's say for example, facilitator. So if the students will give answers, the teacher will be the sole entity invalidating if the answer is correct. That's
Yes.
it.
Okay. I hope that
Ayun ba,
answers
Pep?
your question. Yan, may tanong pa po.
Needed po ba? Ayun, sir.
Needed po ba from Maria Rosario Santos Miguel? Ma'am, good evening po. The question is, needed po ba na maraming activities sa bawat topic na nakapaloob sa module? Salamat po.
Okay. Marami siyang consideration, mama. First, ano po yung nakalagay sa inyong MELC or sa curriculum? Kasi may mga code po doon. In those codes, nagbibigay siya ng suggested number of days. If you think, kasi hindi ko po siya masasagot na kung madami o konti, magbibigay lang po ako ng factors. First is it should be aligned with your MELC. When you say aligned with your curriculum, the curriculum gives suggested number of days for that particular competency to be discussed. So kung sa tingin ninyo nakalagay dun sa curriculum ay 4 na araw siya, dapat at some point 3 activity ilalagay mo for that particular competency. Kasi yung pang-4 pwedeng checking or pwedeng 2 pre-test, post-test. Depende po yon sa code ng inyong curriculum. That's the first one. Second, your way of organizing the idea. At makikita mo lang yon sa MELC, sa curriculum. If you think the curriculum gives you a lot of topics to be discussed, it is expected that the activity should hit each competency. Kasi dun mo lang siya makiklaim na yung competency mo ay effective. Yung activity rather or the module itself is effective. Why? Kasi siya ay naka-align with your activity. Okay? Third, and the last, it will depend on the number of days set by the Department of Education and set by your school. Kung titignan nyo po ang calendar ng DepEd, baka may matuklasan kayong nakakatuwa. Why? Start po ng class natin August 24. Correct me if I'm wrong tinignan ko na kasi siya at doon ko kasi binase yung module namin. The first thing is August 24, last week ng August. Then kung titingnan niyo po maigi, the first quarter will fall on the second week of October. So kung bibilangin niyo lang po yung dami ng araw, most likely 1 month and a half lang siya. 'Di ba? So nakadepende sa tatlo. Curriculum guide, then your order of arranging the idea, and of course, the number of days set by DepEd. Yon. So kung i-consider mo lahat yon, ma'am, masasagot mo yung dami ng activities na kailangan mo per topic.
Okay po. Sige. Thank you, Sir Ren.
Thank you.
So we have another question. Ito po, I'd like to thank also Mr. Andy Carion Brimon for watching us live.
Hi, Sir Andy.
Hi, Sir Andy. He has a question, but it's not popping out in the screen. And this is Sir Pete. I'll read na lang the question, Sir Ren. I will read na lang the question from Sir Andy Carion.
Sige.
Are all modules in different divisions in the country have the same format, or it will depend on the discretion of every SDO?
I think it will depend on the discretion of, not SDO. It will depend on the regional supervisors. What type or what format are they allowed to, or are they allowed to be used? I think for most in DepEd, the first part is the ADM or the alternative delivery mode, followed by, I think in our region NCR, they give a new type of format which we are currently using right now at par from ADM. I think academia also has a format which I can strongly suggest because it's very, very good. Very, very good. I think it's design thinking. They have this format or modules that I think can also give the best out for students. Iba-iba. Iba-iba po, sir.
Okay. Okay. So I guess we can proceed. The next question from Ma'am Jeneline Marundan. Good evening po, ma'am. Thank you for watching. Ilan po ba dapat lang activities sa bawat part ng module?
Okay. Balikan ko lang po yung sagot kanina-kanina. It will
Okay.
depend on the curriculum code, kung ilan po yung sinuggest ng curriculum code ninyo na number of days. If that is 4 days, if a certain topic has 4 days for one competency, you can have 3 of that 4 days as your activities. And then for the fourth one, maglaan kayo ng isang araw for the discussion. Kasi module yun eh. So ibig sabihin, magkaroon kayo ng time, kung kaya lang naman po, kaya quote and unquote, na magkaroon ng synchronous learning in that episode. If not, make an assurance in your module na kung hindi naintindihan ng bata, yung pang-apat na araw is for the validation. Meaning, if the student find it difficult, pwede siyang mag-text kay teacher on that particular day to address his or her concerns. That's it. The third one is nasa sa inyo. If you think that competency must be limited only to 2 activities, that's good. That's fine. If you think that's it has to be 4 activities, okay lang. Based on research, there are no limit or standard number of activities in a module. That will depend on your subject. In our case, science, medyo marami-rami tayong activities na ilalagay. Pero depende pa rin yun. It will depend on your ability to compress or to merge activities. Like for example, what I've done kanina, yung nakita ko sa module ng academia, merong isang competency doon na parang 3 yung activity niya, parang at some point as a form of extension activities. Now, here's the idea. If the module is so motivating and so challenging, mind you, ang bata hindi titigil ng sagot ng sagot. Why? Kasi the activity is very, very good. It's very, very nice. And it's very, very motivating or interactive to the point na minsan mau-overlap na. Magugulat ka, yung mga bata, imbis na yung ito hanggang dito lang sa portion na to is allotted for a day sasagutan, tumatalo na sila. Why? Kasi it gives the students, kasi nga, dahil because of the activities, napakadaming activity, iba-iba activity, natutuwa si bata. To the point na, ay, kaya kong sagutan to. Ay, ang ganda nito. Kasi, ay, dito nag-crossword. Ay, dito nag-arrange kami ng facts. Oh. Meaning, the motivation is so high, the module itself sustains the motivation of the student. So, it will depend on you. Ang key player lang dito is, what activity will you be doing or presenting to the child? Kasi kung puro open-ended yan, mahihirapan si bata. Maganda rin yung may activity, may pagpipilian, may iaayos, may i-arrange. Yeah. And then, it should promote critical thinking. Like for example, since we're dealing with high school students, hindi na sila enticing sa mga kinukulayan. More of analyzing. Kaya nga diba na module ng academia, meron dun table na i-analyze ni bata. And analysis, critical thinking, gusto ng mga bata yan kasi nasa-challenge sila eh. Lalo na kung nagsiset si teacher ng situation. Kasi meron ako nakita doon na may situation na merong isang, nakita ko lang kanina sa academia eh, na natuwa ako dahil may situation doon na paano mo ipapakita yung pinakamagandang uri ng kape? I think there's one. And so that's good kasi the teacher creates situations that the students can adapt. Meron pa, yung DIY, the do-it-yourself activity at home. Kung ang module mo may ganon, that's a very good module. Why? Kasi may gagawin si bata na hindi lang siya magbabasa, hindi lang siya magnonood, hindi lang siya magsusulat. Kailangan daw ng material. And yung
Yes.
material nakikita sa bahay. See, the impact and the attachment of those very good self-instructional or self-paced module, standalone modules, kung ganun kaganda yung nagagawa, ang bata hindi mabobore. And that is one thing that we need to sustain in our LMS, in our doings right now. Sustain the momentum, the motivation, kasi if we fail to do so, wala. Kahit yung sayang lang yung paghihirapan
Useless po.
natin. Correct.
Useless po lahat.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes, I agree, Sir Ren. Sige, thank you.
Thank you po, Ma'am Jeneline.
Ma'am Zeneline, thank you. So, let me... Yan po, another question from Sir... Oh, nabago pa. From Ma'am Georgie Simeon. Good evening po, ma'am. Thank you for watching. Paano po kung di natapos na sagutan ang buong module?
Okay. Papasok
Sa
ngayon.
isang markahan. Sa isang
okay. That's a good question, ma'am. Thank you for asking that question. It will come to the point, darating lang po yung point na hindi masasagutan lahat ng module kung hindi effective ang feedbacking mechanism ni teacher tsaka ni estudyante. What do I mean by that? Take note, in all the researches about online classes, one thing that is very ine-emphasize pag online class is the effective feedbacking. Kailangan si teacher nakapag-establish ng good routine. Kasi meron tayong mga misconceptions minsan na kapag module, whether online, offline, ibibigay mo na lang agad sa bata without anything. Kapag po ang module, whether online at offline siya, kailangan may feedbacking pa din. Sinasabi po ng DepEd, kakamustahin natin ang bata. Nasaan na kayong activity? Saan kayo nahihirapan? Darating lang po tayo sa moment or doon sa idea na hindi matatapos kasi hindi natin nabigyan ng proper feedbacking ang bata. Masasagot ko yan, ma'am, na kung hindi natapos, siguro at some point, hindi maayos yung teaching routine at learning routine or study habits ni student. For us teachers, tayo po ang may jurisdiction on setting the right teaching learning routine of our student, especially for distance learning. Hindi ma'am, I think yung tanong ni ma'am is effect na yan kapag hindi maayos ang feedbacking. So anong gagawin pag hindi natapos? Technically, ibabalik mo kay bata yun as a form of remediation eh. Yun yung parang counterpart. Pero nakita mo yung impact sa teacher nun, sir. Kapag pag may naiwang hindi nasagutan si bata, kanino ba ang hirap? Kay teacher. Why?
Kay teacher.
Imbis na isang module lang ang chechekan niya, magiging dalawa. Why? Chechekan niya yung hindi natapos habang chinechekan niya yung present.
Yes.
So ano ang challenge kay teacher? Kailangan si teacher merong effective mechanism and feedbacking routine na siniset sa mga bata para ang mga bata, kahit ba sabihin natin may freedom sila kung kailan nila sasagutan yung activity, there is freedom of time, but the freedom is not absolute. Meron pa rin siyang limitations. Let's say, for example, the activity will only last one day. Wag i-check mo yung mga bata, remind them, class, the activity is only for one day. Hindi yung bata ngayon, mag-set siya ngayon ng time sa sarili niya to do that one within the day. Failure to do so, magpo-compound yung mga hindi nasagutan, hindi na makakahabol si bata. And I think for me, fault siya ng bata, tama, kasi hindi nasagutan. Pero at some point, fellow teachers, it's also our fault Why? Kasi our feedbacking mechanism is not that good. So we should also create our own feedbacking mechanism, especially in these times. Take note,
Yes.
ang mga bata po, isolated. Huwag na natin iparamdam na isa sila. May module sila, pero nandun pa rin tayo.
So well, how do you set that up, sir? Like yung feedbacking mechanism. Like
Okay.
today,
Sige, sir.
good thing lang we have the social media and
Yes, sir.
any other means of communication, right,
Mm.
for
Yeah.
distance learning. How about for those students in the mountains, in the rural
Mm-hmm.
areas, where they cannot afford to have those
Okay.
gadgets at all?
That will
Like,
depend now on the quality of your module. So,
okay.
dapat dumating sa point na yung module mo dumaan siya sa talagang talagang binasa, inintindi to the point na at some point ipa-dry run mo siya sa isang bata na ang challenge doon hindi magtatanong si bata.
Hmm.
No? Hindi ko masasagot yung ganung presumption na kasi parang feel ko that's an effect of the quality of module that you
The
were.
module. Okay.
Ibig sabihin, darating yung moment na ang bata hindi na sasagutan nyo kasi hindi niya naintindihan yung module.
Yes.
Bago pa mangyari yon, kailangan naisip na ni teacher yon. Na, ay, may kulang sa module. Kailangan kong dagdagan to ng extrang instruction to minimize questions that are not related anymore to the content of your module. Kaya nga nakita, if there's one thing that is good sa mga academia modules is that meron siyang mga content na kung si bata taga-bundok, may babasahin naman.
I agree.
Na babasahin naman. No? May area or portion na babasahin si bata na hindi na siya magtatanong, ay, nandito pala yung mga babasahin. So, confident siya na masasagot niya yung lesson kasi may babasahin si bata. No, that's offline. May nakalagay pa doon na online. So, ibig sabihin, nabibigyan si teacher at si bata ng flexibility
options
kung ano yung mapipiliin niyang mode para makuha information.
Okay. Sige. Thank you. Another question, Sir Ren, from Jespril Sadudakil Oklaret. Sir, good evening. Thank you for watching. The question is, ask ko lang po, magkatulad lang ba po ang module format ng elementary at high school? Yan po.
Okay, I'm speaking of, my answer is in general ha. I'm not speaking in behalf of DepEd. This is, when we talk, if you're going to dissect yung module ng elementary, especially grades 1 to 3, mga formative years, mas malalaki ang font. May mga 3 lines na pwedeng susulatan kasi we should consider also yung writing, reading skills ni bata. The content is not that long, naka-phrase lang siya, at mas maraming litrato kapag module ng elementary. Kumukonti lang siya or mas kailangan lang siya as the learner increase from dependent to independent. Kung tatanungin mo ko, sir, kung applicable ba ang standalone module sa elementary, hindi siya yung tipong independent, guided.
Guidance. May guidance
Guided, no?
Yes.
Guided in a sense na may role si parent. Siguro naman napakadali ng lesson ng elementary to the point na i-guide lang siya ni teacher.
Pero there is a challenge there. There's a challenge also there, I believe, Ren. If yung parents no read, no write, sorry to say,
isa pa yun.
There is a challenge in the elementary stage, right?
I think we can siguro mas malalim pang creativity.
Yes. About the module.
Kasi hindi natin masasagot yung context na paano kung si parent no read, no write.
Yes po.
Diba?
Mahirap po nun.
Oo. Mahirap talaga siya, sir. Parang ang mangyayari kasi dyan, hindi si bata, hindi siya modular. Yes. Kasi hindi ma-address yung parent-student partnership. Pwedeng ang mangyari dyan, kung may kapitbahay naman siyang kaklase at yung magulang ay reader, pwede siyang sumabay. That's one option. Diba? Second, kung ang parent naman ay kung ang parent no read, no write, kung yun yung parang available eh. Kung may kaklase siya na kapitbahay, na malapit lang naman, I think that's possible na hindi naman siguro magkakahawaan sa COVID yon. Na parang pwede naman sigurong
Yes.
dumating doon sa I think the key there is routines. Mag-set si teacher ng options tsaka routine sa bata. Kaya dapat si teacher alam yung mga ganyang senaryo. What if si parent ay bulag? O magbe-break pa sa module? That's one also aspect, one aspect to consider. Diba? What if si teacher, si bata ang marunong lang magbasa ng Tagalog? So ano gagawin? Kailangan lahat ng tanong may translation siya in Tagalog or in the native language nung parent. May ganon. So the teacher must have the flexibility. Kaya dapat yung pag-survey siya kapag pilates mo sa estudyante mo, nandoon. So crucial, I think for me, crucial yung papasok na buwan na August. Why?
How do they?
Kasi
how
doon tayo mag-i-establish doon.
yes,
Establishing
profile their students, right?
Yeah. We should establish everything. In this upcoming August, we should establish everything from the availability of the child, yung gagamitin niyang gamit, kung may tablet ba, kung may internet ba, saan ang magulang ba nakakabasa, sinong kapitbahay ang may Facebook na pwedeng kontakin yon para makontak yung kaklase. Kami ganon. I encountered those one na parang ang ginagawa is para matrace yung bata sa Facebook or in other platforms, papabago mo yung pangalan, i-standard mo lang para ma-check yung availability. Sir, wala pong Facebook yung family. May kapitbahay bang may Facebook? Yun ang kunin mo. Those stuff. Kasi I think DepEd right now is challenging us to be flexible. Flexible in a sense that to the most flexible thing that we can do, especially in reaching out to our students. We can have good modules, but if that module failure to deliver its role and meaning to the child, failure tayo.
Yan po.
That's it.
Yes, I agree. So thank you to all the teachers.
What would be, I think there
from Ma'am Naza May. Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for watching. Hello, sir.
Good evening, ma'am.
What would be the best intervention for students who could not get good scores on every module? Could they still get a new module for the next week or give more supplementary activities for the module that they didn't understand?
If you're going, if you listen to my talk kanina, di ba one thing that is good in self-learning module is privacy. Di ba, sir? May privacy part. When you say privacy, individualize yon. Ibig sabihin po, kung nahihirapan si bata sa mga activities niya, pwede mo siyang i-reach out. And then, by doing so, you can do individualized remedial activities habang si bata ay nasa quarter na yon. Do not let that child go to another quarter without remediating. I think DepEd would agree that we must remediate that child before the upcoming periodical test. Malalaman mo na yon. For example, for 2 weeks, walang output si bata. May problema. So, i-reach out mo na siya doon. So, it will be challenging on the part of the teacher kasi sabay na gagawin ni bata ito, pero the mere fact na si teacher nakaalalay, the mere fact that the teacher is there to support, to give support, whether by the content or emotional support or any form of support, I think the child can finish that one before the periodical test. The goal here is that the child must finish the module before any summative test. Failure to do so, unang-una babagsak yung bata sa test kasi meron siyang naiwang lessons. Second, mahihirapan si batang habulin yon, resulting for its unmotivation. Mahihirapan. Kaya you should plan it out. I think in the organization, clear naman sa webinar kanina or clear naman sa lesson kanina that we should put first or we should plan first all the activity And then ipasok niyo yung mga ganyang situations. What if hindi makasunod? What if hindi nasagot? You have a plan there. Para in an instant, ma-address mo yung concerns.
Okay. Sige po. Thank you. So, well, I just want to read some comments, Sir Ren,
Yes po.
from the viewer, just to commend you on this very good webinar. From, again, Sir Andy Carion Brimon, very knowledgeable speaker. Congrats, Sir Reyneth and
Thank you po.
Academia. Thank you, sir. Okay. So, my question here, there is one question from Ma'am. Oh, yan, may mga comments din po tayo. Oh, yan. One question from Cola Padilla. Ma'am, good evening po. Oh, very good question. What do you think are the advantages of modular learning?
I think na-mention ko na kanina yun.
Oh,
Okay, I will repeat that one again.
okay.
When we talk about advantages of modular learning, it entails flexibility, especially sa mga bata, on what time sila magsasagot sa
Okay.
kanilang activity. Second, it also promotes responsibility for their learning. And of course, sinasummarize ko na lang, yung minention ko kanina, privacy. Because we can observe, we have this, mag-establish ka ng parang strong relationship between you and that particular child kasi individualized to eh. So mamamonitor natin kung sino yung mga batang left behind, tsaka mamamonitor natin yung mga batang in pace with our modules. Kasi this is standalone.
Yes.
That's
po.
it.
Okay. Thank you, Ma'am Cola Padilla. Okay. Let me just read some more comments here. Congrats, Sir Reyneth. Okay, from Ma'am Irene. Good
Thank
evening,
you, ma'am.
So, Sir Edward David, still watching. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for watching our free webinar live in Facebook. So, I guess we don't have some more questions na. Let me just double check po, Sir Ren.
Walang problema.
Okay. Thank you for answering my questions. So, well, no more questions na, Sir Ren. I just would like to remind everyone of the upcoming webinar. The next webinar will be on August 1st, 2020, the same time, 6 p.m.
Ma'am Reyna.
With, yes, Ma'am Reyna Hara for values education. Sir, anything you would like to add before we
Okay.
wrap up things?
Yeah. I will leave everything like I've mentioned before. Challenge. This is not. This is a challenge to all of us.
Okay.
Na, I'm not thankful that this pandemic comes, but I think this pandemic gives us so much realization on how we teach and how we teach how education looks like. This is a challenge to all of us that in order for us to have a successful teaching and learning process, eto na yon. This pandemic pushes us to our limits and we must be accustomed to that limit. Sabayan natin siya. Hindi lang sabayan, kailangan nating umimbabaw, parang that's the term, parang umangat doon sa challenge natin na eto na yon, distance learning na, walang classroom, anong gagawin? So the challenge here is we must push ourselves to the limit, we must be creative, we must give ourselves time to reflect and to see saan natin best na matuturuan ang mga estudyante natin. That's it.
Okay. So once again, thank you so much, Sir Ren. Very nice presentation. You answered all questions very well. Thank you once again. So, once again, I'd like to remind everyone, next webinar will be on August 1st, same time, 6 p.m. With Ma'am Reyna Hara The topic that will be discussed will be pagtuturo ng values education.
Oh, wow.
Wait lang po ah. Nagsulog ka man niya. Okay. Okay.
Ay, Academia module is on sale, oh.
Yes,
Sale.
yes po. Academia module now on sale. So, uh, now showing the numbers in your screen. By the way, sir, I received the modules from you, so thank you so much.
Welcome.
So I guess that's all for tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just check if I've missed anything. Okay. Well, for more updates and free webinars, please visit our Facebook page, Academia Corp, and our website, academia.ph. And Sir Ren, once again, thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone. It
you.
was a pleasure being with you today. And keep safe, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Sir Ren. Thank you.
Bye